Who are you? And why does your identity matter? Those are questions we're going to answer in this video about remembering who you really are.
Some years ago, my husband, our youngest son, and I lived in Argentina on assignment from the church. Our son and I particularly made something of a career of visiting local sites of interest in our free time. We had a few favorites. Among them was a wild and wonderful zoo, unlike any zoo we had ever seen before. Rather than wander past cages of sleepy animals and admire them from afar, the Lujan Zoo invited visitors to enter the pens and pet the animals, even the most notoriously wild ones. We couldn't resist that invitation. Following the trainer, we made our way into the enclosure, prepared for the very large, very intimidating lions, and we petted them while they seemed to fully ignore us. Once we had safely left the enclosure, I asked the trainers how in the world they could have convinced those giant beasts not to eat us. Their answer was fascinating to me. They called my attention to the several little dogs who likewise inhabited those pens. They told me that one of the things they had done was to raise the lions with those dogs constantly at their sides. When the lions were very small, those yappy dogs were bigger than the lion cubs. The dogs believed that they were in charge, and they chased the lions mercilessly and nipped unkindly at their heels. The baby lion cubs became accustomed to cowering in the corner and behaving as if they were terribly afraid of the pesky little dogs. When the lions grew, they continued to cower in the corner and fear the small dogs. With the flick of a paw, any one of those large lions could easily have sent those dogs flying clear out of the pen. But the lions didn't see themselves as they really were. They were painfully unaware of their regal identity. They were stuck and limited by a mistaken notion of their potential. They thought they were small and weak, so they allowed pesky, persistent dogs to control and intimidate them.
Why does our identity matter so much? What happened to these lions who thought that they were little kittens compared to these big old dogs? Since Darwin, the world has been preaching evolution, that we are descendants of apes, that we are animals, and they've denied our divine creation, that we're children of God. How does thinking we're a descendant of apes impact our connection with God and our identity of who we are and who we should be? Let's watch this next video that you might have seen before about how remembering who we are makes all the difference in the world.
You knew my father?
Correction, I know your father.
I hate to tell you this, but he died a long time ago.
Nope, wrong again. He's alive, and I'll show him to you. You follow old Rafiki, he knows the way. Come on. Don't dawdle. Hurry up!
Hey, whoa, wait.
Come on, come on!
Would you slow down?
Stop! Look down there.
That's not my father. It's just my reflection.
No. Look hard. You see, he lives in you.
Father?
Simba, you have forgotten me.
No.
You have forgotten who you are, and so forgotten me. Look inside yourself, Simba. You are more than what you have become. You must take your place in the circle of life.
How can I go back? I'm not who I used to be.
Remember who you are. You are my son, and the one true king. Remember who you are.
No! Please! Don't leave me! Father! Don't leave me.
All right, so how do you think that scene from The Lion King relates to our story? How are you and I like Simba? And how is Mufasa like our Heavenly Father? Do you think that we may have forgotten who we are or forgotten our divine heritage throughout life or through our experiences? And what do you think it means when he looks in the water and he sees a reflection of himself and Rafiki tells him to look and he sees his father in him? Do you see God in you? Do you see the divinity of who you are as a child of God when you look in the mirror? Today's lesson, we're going to talk about remembering who we are as children of a Heavenly Father. We read in Hebrews 12:9, Paul writes, "Furthermore, we have had fathers of our flesh which corrected us, and we gave them reverence. Shall we not much rather be in subjection unto the Father of spirits and live?" And what subjection unto means submitting or being influenced by someone. So this verse very clearly tells us that God is the Father of our spirits. Heavenly Father is our Father. And this truth should change our life. When you see yourself as someone who's not just an animal, but a descendant of God with divine identity, that makes all the difference, doesn't it?
At a recent training session for general authorities, the question was asked, how can we help those struggling with pornography? Elder Russell M. Nelson stood and replied, teach them their identity and their purpose. That answer resonated with me, not only as a response to that specific question, but as an appropriate response to most of the challenges we face in life.
In that video, Tadar Callister shared that President Nelson believed that teaching people their identity and their purpose would help those who are struggling with pornography to know their true identity. What do you think about that? Do you think there's anything that we can do to remember and honor our divine identity as his children, as his spirit children? Go ahead and reflect for a moment about your own understanding of Heavenly Father and your relationship with him. Consider what blessings you have experienced and you can experience in the future because you are his child. Think about what could be different in your life if you knew him better and felt closer to him. What do you think? Brian K. Ashton said, quote, having a correct idea of Heavenly Father's character, perfections, and attributes is essential to exercising faith sufficient to obtain exaltation. A correct understanding of Heavenly Father's character can change how we see ourselves and others and help us to understand God's tremendous love for his children and his great desire to help us become like him. An incorrect view of his nature can leave us feeling as if we are incapable of ever making it back to his presence. End quote. What are your thoughts on that quote? Why do you think he's saying that correct understanding is so important? How can understanding God as a potentially either a dictator or someone who we should fear and someone that doesn't love us, how does that change our perspective on life, right? And what do you think if people believe that Jesus, like, it's just free love and everything's okay and everything's fine and you don't have to ever even try? How can having that hippie view and believing that God allows anything goes, how does that impact people's life choices? I think it's interesting that he says that God's tremendous love for his children and his desire to help us, and that's so important. Knowing that Heavenly Father not only loves us, but he's there to help us. That should give us all hope and help us all to try a little bit harder to be a little bit better. I want to invite you to pause the video now and in your study journal, go to these scriptures and they'll teach you about the character and attributes of Heavenly Father and how you can have a better relationship with Him. Here are the scriptures for those who are on audio only. Numbers 23:19, Psalms 103:8, Acts 10:34 through 35, Acts 17:28, James 1:17, 1 Nephi 9:6, and Moses 7:30 and 35. Go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to read those verses, and as you read them, try to answer these questions. First of all, what truths did you learn about God that are the most meaningful to you? Why are they meaningful? Next, how could what you learned affect how you feel about who you are and who you can become? And finally, what actions do you feel inspired to take based on what you've learned and felt today from those verses? Again, I invite you to pause the video and just take the time to study these. You can look them up on a digital device, on the internet, or on your paper scriptures if you want. But as you study these, you're really going to get to know more about who He is. And by knowing who He is, as His child, you'll know more about who you are. What did you learn from that study? Is there anything that you want to share with the rest of us? Feel free to share in the comments below the video what characteristics impressed you the most and how that impacts your feeling towards Him, or perhaps how you want to have a relationship with Him. Do you see how much He loves you in these verses? Do you see how powerful He is and how able He is to help us? What do you notice? Elder Dallin H. Oaks said, quote, "Consider the power of the idea taught in our beloved song, I am a child of God. Here's the answer to one of life's great questions, who am I? I am a child of God with a spirit lineage to heavenly parents. That parentage defines our eternal potential. That powerful idea is a potent antidepressant. It can strengthen each of us to make righteous choices and to seek the best that is within us," end quote. What do you like about that quote? Do you see how knowing who we are can make a difference? As we watch this music video, consider how knowing you are a spirit child of Heavenly Father changes everything for the better today, tomorrow, and forever.
I am a child of God, and He has sent me here, has given me an earthly home with parents kind and dear. Lead me, guide me, walk beside me, help me find the way. Teach me all that I must do to live with Him someday.
I am a child of God,
and He has sent me here,
has given me
an earthly home with parents kind and dear.
Lead me,
Guide me,
Walk beside me,
help me find the way.
teach me all that I must do
to live with Him someday.
I am a child of God, and so my needs are great.
Help me to understand His words
Before it grows too late, lead me, guide me, walk beside me, help me find
I love seeing the light in the eyes of all those people in that video who know who they are, that they are children of God. And I want you to know, if you're watching this, you're a child of God too, and he loves you just as much as he loves me or anyone else in the world. God does not play favorites. You are a child of God. He loves you. He will help you. He wants to help you if you turn to him. I promise you, he loves you. And I invite you to remember who you are, that you are a child of God, that he is your Father. And I want you to get to know your Heavenly Father directly through sincere prayer. Remember who you are.